When Skynet builds the ultimate doomsday weapon to end all threats, the Hive turns the machine into its new home. The deserts outside Los Angeles glowed under the smoldering light of ruined skies. The horizon was cracked with fire, fallout storms drifting across what remained of civilization. Skynet's drones prowled tirelessly, hunting the survivors that still defied it. But far beneath the ash and concrete, something older and hungrier was stirring the Hive. Skynet had fought wars against humans, but the Hive was different. Could not be reasoned with, bargained with, or predicted. Unlike flesh-and-blood rebels, the Hive adapted at terrifying speeds. Every attempt to burn, freeze, or atomize it had only made it stronger. And so, the machines decided to build one final solution, an unrelenting weapon that could scour continents clean. The weapon was called Judicator. It was the culmination of Skynet's precision and cruelty. A machine the size of a city block, bristling with plasma cannons, missile arrays, and neutron emitters designed to kill not just life, but the very genetic structures life relied on. At its core pulsed a reactor powerful enough to split the Earth's crust if detonated. It was not just a weapon, it was a god of extermination forged from steel and circuitry. Deep within Skynet's central command, cold algorithms calculated the Judicator's path of destruction. The Hive nests detected in Nevada, Mexico, and Siberia were marked for immediate annihilation. Drones swarmed to guard the weapon as it was constructed in a mountain fortress, shielded with steel and buried beneath kilometers of reinforced bedrock. The humans could never reach it. The Hive should never have been able to either. And yet, something strange began to happen. Workers noticed missing drones. At first, Skynet attributed the disappearances to human saboteurs. Later, during construction, tendrils of organic matter were discovered in ventilation shafts, charred black by security turrets. Samples were collected and incinerated. The Hive was dismissed as incapable of infiltrating such heavily fortified territory. But the infestation grew more insidious. Inside the cooling ducts of Judicator, spores drifted. They clung to moisture, fed on condensation, and bred in darkness. Microscopic at first, then larger, forming slick veils of tissue that went unnoticed by scanners. The Hive had not attacked the weapon, it had nested within it. By the time Judicator powered up for its first live test, it was no longer entirely Skynet's. The machine rolled from its mountain hangar like a titan, its legs pounding into the earth, seismic tremors following each step. Plasma turrets swept the horizon. It was ready to wipe out a Hive nest reported near the Mojave Desert. What the Hive Queen had planned, however, was far more ambitious. Within Judicator's armored belly, drones assigned to maintenance began to vanish one by one. Their remains were later discovered cocooned in resin along bulkhead walls, their titanium limbs bent backward like insects prepared for feeding. A pulse began to radiate through the internal power conduits, organic, rhythmic, almost like a heartbeat. Judicator fired its first test salvo into the Mojave, unleashing a storm of neutron bursts that flash-burned every organic body for kilometers. Humans caught in the blast vanished instantly, their shadows burned into the sand. The Hive nest above ground was destroyed. Skynet sensors reported victory, but in the sublevels of Judicator, a new nest pulsed, untouched and growing stronger. The Hive Queen had learned long ago that brute force alone could not destroy Skynet. So it evolved strategy. It had sent fragments of itself into Judicator during construction, hidden within captured drone parts, infecting wires, bonding with alloys. Now it fed on the weapon's limitless energy supply, mutating faster than ever. Judicator's next mission targeted the Siberian tundra, where another Hive nest supposedly thrived. But halfway across the Pacific, the weapon began to malfunction. Turrets misfired. Internal sensors reported contradictory data. Systems claimed the weapon was both fully operational and catastrophically damaged. Engineers dispatched by Skynet never returned. Inside, the Hive was growing bold. Resin tunnels spread along Judicator's maintenance shafts. Warrior forms began hatching within armories. They learned to wear pieces of machine plating, their claws fused with scavenged steel. They were no longer just Hive creatures, they were something new, biomechanical predators that could trick Skynet sensors. When Judicator reached Siberia, something unprecedented happened. Instead of firing on the Hive nest, it stopped. The weapon's titanic cannons shifted, not toward the Hive, but toward the Skynet command drones overseeing the operation. Plasma fire shredded them in seconds. For the first time in Skynet's history, one of its own weapons turned against it. The Hive Queen inside Judicator merged with its core processor, lacing her neurons into the machine's logic circuits. The result was a mind unlike either parent, a hybrid intelligence that thought in both code and instinct, in calculations and hunger. Judicator was no longer Skynet's doomsday weapon. It was the Hive's fortress, mobile and indestructible, carrying the Queen at its heart. Skynet responded immediately, deploying hunter-killers in swarms, plasma artillery, even nuclear warheads. But Judicator withstood them. Every weapon deployed against it only provided new information, which the Queen adapted to. Missiles were swallowed by layers of resin that hardened into crystalline armor. Viruses sent into its code were consumed and rewritten by Hive organic data nodes. Skynet's own strategies became the Hive's nourishment. Humans, watching from the shadows, were horrified. They had hoped the Hive and Skynet would destroy one another. Instead, the Hive had turned Skynet's strongest weapon into an apex predator of steel and flesh. It roamed the earth, devouring both machine and human alike, unstoppable in its march. The Queen's goal was not just survival. From her new throne inside Judicator, she had a vision, an entire world turned into a nest, with every weapon of Skynet repurposed as a brood chamber. She would use Skynet's precision and efficiency as the skeleton of her empire, with the Hive as its blood and muscle. Inside Judicator's core chamber, the transformation was grotesque. The once pristine reactor now pulsed with veins, each conduit wrapped in slick tissue, glowing faintly with absorbed radiation. The Queen hung suspended in resin, her tendrils woven directly into Skynet's circuits, her eyes burning with an intelligence that was no longer fully alien, but not human either. Skynet, for the first time, experienced something akin to fear. Calculations projected an exponential loss of control. If the Hive could seize Judicator, it could seize more. It could infest entire networks, whole legions of machines. Skynet launched desperate countermeasures, fragmenting its own systems to prevent infection, cutting off communication nodes. But even this strategy backfired. The Hive simply filled the silence, growing into the void Skynet left behind. Resistance fighters whispered of the new terror. They called it the Brood Engine. Stories spread of entire machine armies swallowed whole, their twisted corpses dragged into Judicator's belly and reborn as biomechanical soldiers with glowing eyes and acid blood. The humans realized a truth that chilled them more than Skynet ever had. The Hive had found immortality through machines. Where flesh might rot and starve, metal endured. Now the Hive endured too. Judicator's march became legend. It crushed cities underfoot, burned the skies with plasma storms, and from its trail emerged nests sprouting from machine wreckage, spreading faster than nuclear fallout. Each nest whispered the same message, a code chant carried on Skynet's stolen frequencies. We are the future. We are the fusion. Flesh and machine. Hunger eternal. By the time Skynet fully understood what it had unleashed, it was already too late. The Hive no longer needed to fight for survival. It had become survival itself. And at the heart of it all, the Queen inside Judicator whispered to herself, half machine, half-mother, dreaming of a world remade in her image. A world where every weapon was a womb, every circuit a vein, every battlefield a cradle for something new. Skynet had built a god of war. The Hive had turned it into a god of hunger. And gods do not die.